Facebook has upheld its ban on former U.S. President Donald Trump today, promising that the committee that oversees this, the Oversight Administration, will review that ban in 6 months. It did take some by surprise, though, the ongoing ban, and certainly was met with an angry response by Team Trump. Ian Lee is with us now for the debrief. He's the associate prof at the School of Business at Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Ian, so I believe that this story should actually be broken into two parts. There was the original ban, the removal of Donald Trump during an election period, at a very heated period, and a potentially difficult constitutional issue around transition. And then there is this ban on future speech, the implication that he might do something in the future. Let's start with the first ban. When they imposed it in the first place, were you surprised? Did you think it was the right thing to do? Should Facebook have the power to ban in those circumstances?
I was surprised, and no, I don't think that any corporation or private entity should be allowed to ban speech. And very quickly, I realize that people are saying, no, look, this is just a technology platform. But it is not just another technology platform like PowerPoint. It has become de facto, not de jure, but de facto the public square. It has a de facto monopoly. And because they have over, 2.5 billion, 3 billion customers or subscribers. And so this is the new public square. And to ban somebody from Facebook is to ban speech. I don't think there can be any doubt about that, no matter how much one spins that. And then and so that doesn't mean that maybe we shouldn't have a quasi-autonomous administrative tribunal. You know, we've got human rights tribunals and trade tribunals, and maybe we should be looking at that down the road. But the idea that there is this unaccountable, unelected group of 7 or 8 or 9 people who can make such momentous decisions is really, really troubling. And then the larger issue, very quickly, is because I guess I'm a student of history and I've studied early Canadian history, early American history. The idea that we're regulating politicians for saying offensive, disgusting, and outrageous things, which Trump has done. Trump is an odious human being. But it's never been illegal to be an obnoxious, odious, ignorant human being. And so why are we banning him? Yes, what he said is disgusting and vile and should be condemned in the strongest terms by other people. But banning them? I mean, this is just beyond the pale.
Let's hang on that for a second, because that gets us to the second part of this Oversight Administration's decision. And I must say, this creation of Facebook's feels like something that Orwell would have written up. As you say, it's this cabal of people that we're supposed to trust to make these, judicious rulings on what is and is not acceptable speech. Historically, lots of things were unacceptable, quote unquote, that we look back on and say, wow, were they ever wrong? Copernicus had it right, and he shouldn't have been excommunicated, or Galileo. However, in this case, we do have very clearly delineated lines around hate speech, fomenting civil unrest, which led to the first ban. Do you think that companies like Facebook or other social media platforms, because to your point, there are a few very large players here, do they do a good job of monitoring on that line, on the hate speech line?
I don't think they do, and I think it's because it's so difficult. I'm not trying to suggest that it doesn't exist. There's hateful people out there. There's racists in the world. I mean, my goodness, there's people out there that are murderers. There's bad people in the world. There's no doubt about that. I'm not naive, but at the same time, and I remember I started my academic career in the late '80s, and that was just about the time of Ernst Zundel and the attempt to prosecute him. And there's no question he was odious. There's no question he was disgusting. There was no question he was a bigot, and he was an anti-Semite. He was all those things. But the courts were very, very concerned about that because of it's so dangerous and so risky going over into and regulating speech, because then somebody has to say, A, you can't do that, and B, we are going to ban you from doing that. And the totalitarian regimes that I have taught in for 30 years have developed really good practices in that respect. Of course, I'm being very sarcastic. I'm talking China. I'm talking an odious regime called Russia. I'm talking Iran. where they ban people because they disagree with the powers that be, with the elites, and going all the way back to Socrates, and without trying to be philosophical here, the people that get banned throughout history, and I'm exempting Trump, of course, often are people that are just different from everybody else. They were gay,
Absolutely.
or they were women. They burnt Florence, the nurse, at the stake. I mean, and so we have to be really, really careful that we're not just banning. The dominant view is banning the minoritarian view, because we find them legitimately in our own minds as disgusting and offensive. And I do find Trump disgusting and offensive.
Of course.
But I don't think we should be banning him.
I think one reason this story is important, one, to me as a journalist, I find it important, is how quiet journalists have been about it. In other words, the defense of free speech has not been heard loud and clear, because I think everybody feels as though he's so odious. But to me, that's not a good reason not to defend free speech. But let's set that aside. The other aspect that's so interesting, Ian, is what is Facebook's motivation here? Because you would expect a platform like that to defend its right to be autonomous. In other words, not to have to monitor, as they argued for so long. They don't want to monitor the content. They just offer a platform. They're not actually responsible for what gets said on it. But they're fighting a battle on many fronts. And I fear they're offering this up as kind of a political sop in order to avoid being called to account on some of the other fronts that they're very worried about, which feels to me like a bad trade-off.
That is exactly the interpretation I came to, that they are worried about some illegal actions that have been initiated in the United States by some attorneys general, both Republican and Democratic, at the state level, and of course the Congress, where the Biden administration, I'm not blaming Biden at all, I'm not pointing the finger at him, but they have expressed a great concern about these technology giants. And so I think that what Facebook is doing is, because they know that Trump is odious in the court of public opinion to millions and millions of people, they're offering him up and saying, look, we'll ban this guy because you hate him so much. But now we're getting into good old-fashioned politics. The Democrats are in charge. They hate Trump. They found him odious and disgusting. So did I. So therefore, let's use the power of the state to go after him, or at least through a proxy called Facebook, which is willing to go along with it if they can avoid regulation themselves. And that's why it's so fraught with problems in this area. And this is why I think this is not the solution, using Facebook or other technology giants to monitor them. If we really want to go down that road as a society, I don't think we should. But if we're going to, then let's set up a quasi-autonomous tribunal like the Human Rights Tribunal. And then at least they're accountable, because we can haul the tribunal before Parliament or Congress to say, why did you do this, or why did you rule that way? Right now, there's zero accountability whatsoever. This is the Wild West. It's a kangaroo court that smacks of the Stalinist type of show trials that they had in the Soviet Union, because it's kabuki theater, meaning there's no accountability, and it's not grounded in any jurisprudence of which I am aware.